And welcome everyone. It's great to be here, and it's great to see. Well, hopefully, we can see some of these faces. I'm going to turn my video on, and it's great to be here. Thank you very much for all of you to join us. So perhaps we can get started with a quick round of introductions for those of you who still don't or not super familiar with the folks here. So maybe Paul, we can start with you, if you would mind telling a little bit about your background, how you got into crypto, how you got into Kive, and where you're based out of. That would be super useful.
Okay, sure. So as you can guess with my accent, I am from France, but I'm based in Berlin. So I don't have the German accent yet, thankfully. So I started in crypto, I started looking into crypto in 2015, a bit earlier. I was young back then, and I asked for even earlier. I think I don't exactly remember, but I asked my mom for Christmas between one Bitcoin or one subscription for a video game for over a year. She chose a subscription for the video game because it was easier to buy back then. So unfortunately, I didn't have my first Bitcoin. And then after I switched, I kept interested into it, but take a step back, to be honest, wasn't looking too much into it. Then I came back in 2016, something like that, and started being more involved with local community in France. So for Binance, and so on. So I get higher, recruited because it's not a job, but more volunteer position as a Binance Angel in France. So I was one of the first Binance Angel in France, helping Binance to grow the community, then start working on the project in the Polkadot ecosystem, and then founded Kive thanks to my mom on a job offer. She found she's also looking into crypto since she regrets her decision to don't buy a Bitcoin back then. So no, she introduced me, she sent me the job offer. I started looking into Kive, and I was really impressed with what those team was building. So I decided to join. And since then, it's 3.5 years. I'm doing a head of ecosystem at Kive. So mostly doing BD, reaching out to people, explaining them what is Kive and also what is Arweave, because Kive is nothing without Arweave. So how they can leverage data that have been uploaded into Arweave to serve them and to use all the historical data of blockchain as public good and to build stuff on top of it. So yeah, that's it for me.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Paul. And it's a cool story. Well, and it turns out that your mom came full circle and now is responsible for you also being on the Kive ecosystem. That's great. Thank you. Tom, what about you, friend? What is your background? How do you come to the Arweave ecosystem, and what is it that you're building on right now?
Yeah, so I came into the Arweave ecosystem around 2020. Again, kind of a huge fan of blockchain technology, but Arweave being able to not only store data, but also do it at scale. So my background was mainly around data applications, and really fell into Arweave, focused on data and blockchain technology. Last year, I built a protocol called the Stamp Protocol that's really made to allow for discoverability on the permaweb, which is kind of the web layer of Arweave. And now I'm working on not only continuing to build other protocols, but help teams with composability and the ability of discovering data on the Arweave ecosystem.
Awesome. Yes, that last bit, super important, right? How to make sure that the interesting and valuable information that is stored on Arweave actually also gets discovered, getting it out there. So I'm sure that we'll talk more about that. After all, the title of this panel is the future of Arweave, and that plays a huge part in it. Thanks, Tom. Ahmad, are you also there, friend?
Hey everyone.
Hey,
Originally, I'm a software engineer and a senior tech writer. I started contributing to multiple Web3 protocols like 3 years ago, including the Graph. I was doing tech writing, dev advocacy, devrel basically. Now I'm with WeaveDB, and I'm the CEO of WeaveDB. It's a decentralized NoSQL database as a smart contract on Arweave. Yeah, I'm excited about this panel, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. And where are you based out of, Ahmad? And then also back to you, Tom. Where are you based out of? Where are you calling in from now?
So I'm residing in Dubai, but now I'm just traveling around. Now I'm in KL in Malaysia.
Nice. Awesome. Sweet. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I'm currently based out of Charleston, South Carolina, in the U.S.
Nice. We were relatively close geographically yesterday, Tom. I was and very far up north in Florida. So I saw Charleston in the map and like try to go 3 hours drive, but decided to go the other way and go down south. But all right, cool. Let me perhaps get started with what do you think the current state of the Arweave ecosystem is? And perhaps we can start with you, Tom. Like, what are some things that you're seeing that have been perhaps like setting up the playing field for what the future of Arweave is going to be? So perhaps in the last 6, 12 months, what are some things that have happened that have really laid the groundwork?
Yeah, so the ecosystem continues to grow tremendously, like you said, every 6 months. But I think from my perspective, we've really made a lot of gains in protocols. So we've got ANS 110, which is the discoverability protocol. We have the universal data license, which allows creators to specify their data rights in a licensable way. And then we have the universal content marketplace and the stamps protocol, which is a universal like button. And then we've also made a lot of progress with compute. So Warp and MEM are two systems that allow you to do compute with SmartWeave on Arweave. And then wallets, a lot of progress with wallets. RConnect shipped 1.0. AuthInt allows you to use Auth Auth2 to connect to the PermaWeb. EverID launched and Arweave.app. And the other two things that I think are of note is gateways. So now we have over 149 different gateways through r.io, which makes it super easy to run your own gateway node. And then databases, WeaveDB, HoloDB, etc. So we've been really growing at a fast pace, and there's lots of new innovations now on Arweave.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you for the recount. And it's pretty impressive when you just like spend like 3 or 4 minutes just listing those so like innovations that have come into the Arweave ecosystem, because so much happens very, very quickly here. So perhaps just to follow up on that, what does it mean? Like combined all of this, what does it enable? Is there like a specific unlock that you're seeing? What does it mean for everyone here listening?
Yeah, for me, I think what you're seeing is a fully decentralized data-driven platform, which from my opinion is this is the promise of what the internet was supposed to be when it launched in the 90s. So I kind of see that we're using these technologies to create a sovereign place where users can store and interact and share knowledge and data.
Awesome. Yes, fully agree. And I think that's basically it's been, these are like the building blocks that you need. Like the infra is there in order to really make this come to fruition. Now turning to you, Paul, what do you see? How do you see things? I mean, you're head of Eco at Kive. How do you see, or how do you perceive the Arweave ecosystem? And perhaps in your conversations with other folks when you're trying to explain what Arweave is and also what Kive does.
So, in my opinion, I'm going to talk also more about what's happened online, kind of on Twitter and so on. You see, like many debate lately about who is really truly decentralized, who is not truly decentralized, how you make sure that, you know, you have all this data availability conversation going on with like this wording, and then after, no, it's not the real wording, we should change this wording and so on. So it's kind of funny to see all this debate and see that Arweave is already kind of the solution to all of that, because like Arweave give you the data availability layer that you need for your blockchain, and Kive on top of that give you the data validity layer to import those data to Arweave. So you see more and more conversation going on around that, and at the end of those conversations, most of the time the solution is always Arweave. People are always talking a bit about Arweave because it's like the thing that it's the made for solution for that. And it's like kind of a problem that we all realize in the space about a bit late, I think, for all proof of stake network mechanism. And like not only layer one, you have also layer two, you have Validium that Polygon will use, for example, in the future. And basically all the data, historical data might be like stored off chain, and you will rely on someone with a cryptography incentive that should give you the data if you asked for, but it's not sure. Like it's wrote in the description of their documentation that they can provide the data, but they don't have to. So it's kind of funny to see that, you know, truly decentralization don't exist yet. And I think Arweave is a key pillar for that. And more people start understanding what and why Arweave is important. I think what is lacking, and like Arweave team have made a huge effort lately on that with all the thread on Twitter and so on. It's like educational content to explain how it's work in simple words. Because like we all know, like as a head of ecosystem, I can tell you, most people are lazy. They don't read. You know, it's like the same with the media. You just read the title of the thing and you're like, oh, I know what's up, what is in the new. No, you know the main title, but after you need to read the description, what's happened for real, you know? And many people don't read the docs. They just read the first lines and they're like, okay, I get it. But you need to deep dive a bit more to understand truly how it's work and what is the incentive model behind it and so on. Because when you say like it's stored permanently, people are like, permanently what, 10 years? No, not 10 years, way more than that. But it's hard for them to understand. And I think in Web3, we have also this problem where you have like many protocol layer one, you know, that want to be the ETH killer or Bitcoin killer and use like such big marketing like term and wording that after when you have legit project coming with like real promises that are proven by mathematical thing and like use cases and so on, it's hard for people to believe them. So it's kind of the work that we still have to do to make, okay, it's not only just marketing buzzword, but it's also what it's truly, and here's are the proof. Like you can check it, and if you don't trust me, verify. So I think it's where we are at this stage, at this path. If you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have said we have a big effort to do, I think, on marketing and on like pushing the world outside the Arweave ecosystem. But I think Arweave team is taking the right path to do so right now. So it's very cool to see that.
Cool. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And it's not only, fortunately, it's not the Arweave team, it's the Arweave ecosystem that it really is coming together to help explain outside of our own necessary community, to explain what the advantages are of using the Arweave or any product or any application in the Arweave ecosystem. It's a little bit like, remember when we had the banking crisis in March, Silicon Valley Bank went down, and then people were like, "Oh, right, that's why Bitcoin. That's why it makes a ton of sense, because I don't have to trust any other bank and have all these issues." I feel like the same thing happens every time that someone gets deplatformed or there's censorship or there's a data availability issue. And like, oh, right, yeah, that's why it matters. It's not just something trivial to have. It's not just something to stand behind philosophically, it has real practical implications for the usability of products and applications, and also for the rights that people have. So yeah, totally with you there. I see that we have Sam here and joining. Hey Sam, how's it going?
Hey everyone, how are we doing? And yeah,
Good.
I guess I'd also like to jump in on what Paul said there. That's exactly right. I think that helping educate people and helping them understand that the whole point of Arweave, and arguably decentralized systems in general, is that you can verify, you don't have to trust, and that they should verify is really important. And yeah, to the question of marketing, I also agree with Seb. It's, you know, Forward Research has been publishing more threads about how Arweave works, but like ultimately it's the Arweave ecosystem that has taken that mantle forwards, and we're building this decentralized communications infrastructure, basically. So I think Longview Labs, which publishes under only Arweave on Twitter, has been doing an amazing job spreading the word, and same with Weavers, which is a new organization set up by Luke Bateman, who was head of growth at ETH Global, really ran growth operations at, I was going to say at Ethereum, obviously not at Ethereum, but at the organization that did most of the growth work for Ethereum. So he's been taking up the mantle in the Arweave ecosystem as well recently, and that's been great to see. Yeah, I think it kind of takes a village on this front to get the word out.
100%. And we started a little bit ahead of time, Sam, and we're still, I believe that we're still waiting for Anthony to join us. But basically, we asked folks here to introduce themselves and explain a little bit, perhaps how they got into crypto and the Arweave ecosystem. So if you'd like to continue with that format, how did you get started, Sam? How did you start working on Arweave, and what drove you to do that?
Yeah, so I first encountered crypto in 2011 or so, 2010, 2011, when Bitcoin was worth something less than $1. And I thought it was kind of curious, magic internet money. Didn't really think too much of it at the time, although it was a very novel idea. I was really interested in BitTorrent at that time. So this was kind of a clear extension of the vision. But it wasn't until about 2013, I think, in that wave, there was sort of like hype waves. I think I was in hype wave number 2. I started mining Bitcoin. And on the Bitcoin Talk forums, there was a subforum for altcoins. And in that time, people were just starting to experiment with the first alternative consensus mechanisms, consensus algorithms. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But at the time, it was super, super early. I think there was something called Peercoin, which was the first proof of stake network, and a few others that were just starting to experiment with what that might look like. And then Ethereum came along a little bit later, and I watched that from the start. I put $15 into the ICO, which turned into a lot more than 15, but still not like, yeah, it was some money, but then but that kind of, I guess, gave me the impetus to watch as the Ethereum ecosystem grew. And so I really saw that whole thing play out. And it wasn't until, I think in 2016, I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my ETH? I'd had imagined that I'll put in enough that I could buy like a server on AWS for like a month or two. That was how I imagined I would use my ETH when I put it into the ICO. But then it wasn't until about 2016. And the first thing when it came to developing on Ethereum I did was like Google, how do I store a website on Ethereum? To which I was thoroughly disappointed. Like on the marketing website for Ethereum back in 2014, they had Ethereum is the world computer on the front page. And so I just imagined, you can store web applications, websites inside this thing. And so I was a little bit disappointed at that. And then in 2017, I saw a bunch of different threads coming together in the world. I essentially guess I fundamentally believed, and I still do believe, that the world was becoming more unstable. And it was time to solidify digital rights, if that makes sense. So the right to speak freely on the internet, and the right for things to be remembered if people desire them to be. And I was doing a PhD in distributed operating systems, and so I had some background, but not on decentralized permissionless networks, but there was a sort of small bridge, I guess. And I started looking at the problem, well, what happens when you try to store large amounts of data on chain? Because this was something I'd always thought was super interesting from the very first block of Bitcoin, right? This newspaper headline that Satoshi embedded in there. Yeah, there's something really compelling about the fact that newspaper headline is replicated in so many places on Earth without a single centralized point of failure, that it would be virtually unfathomable for it to be lost, at least in the next, say, 500 years, something like that, I would guess. Yeah, and so that was the basis of the idea. Well, can we make that scale? And can we make it properly permissionless so that anyone could put arbitrary amounts of data inside? And that was 6.5 years ago. And we launched Arweave 5.25 years ago. And yeah, I now lead Forward Research, which is fortunately just one of the many organizations in the Arweave ecosystem that are now pushing forward the mantle of adoption of the network. And so really, really very grateful for all of the other ecosystem participants like PermaDAO, for example, who put together this event that are pushing the envelope there. We can do it without this village approach. And so I'm genuinely very, very grateful for that. I think Arweave is one of the more decentralized ecosystems, probably one of the most outside of Bitcoin. And so that's, yeah, it's really cool to see.
That makes a ton of sense. And yeah, it's great to have that recount of how things, like the motivations behind it, how you got started with it. Tom already did the favor here of sort of like speaking a little bit about the innovations on the technical front that have occurred over the past 6 to 12 months. And I think that's, this panel is called The Future of Arweave. So I think it's important to try to understand a little bit, like, where is it that we what was the starting point, where are we coming from, where's it right now? And perhaps that's something that we can jump on with you, Ahmad. Your take on, like, where are we right now? And then we can start really thinking about, like, what are the things that we're building on right now that are going to be unlocking the future of Arweave. Perhaps also not, I think that having an insular approach into what it is that we're doing is okay, but I think that it's also super important to see what do you think the future of Arweave is going to be in response to what we think is going to happen in technology and more broadly speaking. But perhaps, Ahmad, what are some things that you guys are working on right now? What are some things that are exciting you right now happening in the Arweave ecosystem?
Yeah, so every time someone asks me about Arweave, I literally just tell them that Arweave is the only solution to scale Web3 or the entire blockchain space. Because, okay, Arweave started as a decentralized permanent storage solution, but we need Arweave for so many other use cases. If you compare it to Ethereum or any other blockchains, I just saw this tweet by Richard saying that if you want to store 1 gigabyte of data on Ethereum, you have to pay $63 million, which is like insane. I thought that it's really expensive, but not to pay $63 million to store a single gigabyte of data on Ethereum. When it comes to Arweave, you can store data for like $3, $4. And it's permanent, it's decentralized. So Arweave is the only solution to scale Web3, to build actual fully decentralized web applications. So what we are working on at WeaveDB, it's basically a decentralized database. And we believe that we need a decentralized database to onboard the next 1 million devs from Web 2 into Web3, because till this moment, all the use cases we have in crypto are limited. Like, for example, sending tokens, simple DeFi interactions, NFTs, and that's it. We don't have an actual fully decentralized web application built fully on chain, fully decentralized, and actually works. So to do that, we need a decentralized database. We need WeaveDB, we need Quill, we need other databases. So yeah, I believe that Arweave, WeaveDB, all the protocols being built on Arweave are the solutions to build fully decentralized web applications.
Yep, I agree, and I think that it's something that you guys certainly have been working on. I remember when we started, when we met in person with Tomo, that was a little bit of over a year ago, and it was like pretty clear that there was still room, and there's still room to innovate there, and you guys have been doing a great job at it. Paul, perhaps turning to you, what are some current things that you're seeing in the Arweave ecosystem, or things that you're seeing happening with Kive that you're most excited about?
So just not only, I think like even the first like utility of Arweave of keeping like historical like documents, like resources intact for the long term, you know, keeping all this information relating, like without going into debate, but with all what's happening in the world right now, like the spreading of fake news everywhere, plus like all this crisis that we see everywhere, it's really important. And I think it's people like start to understand that we all know that we would all want to have a legacy, but the humanity also have its own legacy, and the history of humanity need to be kept somewhere that we are sure that we can have it forever. And I think it's like going back a bit to the fundamental of Arweave, let's say, but I think it's even with just that, I think Arweave is such a great thing because like it's super important for the future of the humanity by itself to have access to all the resources without any censorship and accessible for everyone for education and open-mindedness and so on. After on the for Kive, that is more like blockchain related for now in our aspect. This year we have released like few products. So first of all, we launched mainnet like 6 months ago, something like that. We uploaded more than 1 terabyte of data onto Arweave in a completely decentralized way. So we are pretty proud of this achievement, and we plan to have more data uploaded before the end of the year for sure. We have released a product that is called an ELT pipeline. So that's allow you to query any data that have been uploaded through Kive into your local warehouse, such MongoDB, Snowflake, MicroSQL, SQL, and so on. We support more than 60 destinations. So that's also a part of educating people and making data on Arweave accessible to like everyone, like more Web2 people, let's say, because it's like a one-click solution. So I think it's something that is really important. And what we were lacking a bit, it was how we make all those data that we have uploaded through Kive accessible for the broader audience, and like also like Web2 institutional company that want to do accounting or want to do data analytics before taking any decision, I don't know, on Cosmos Chain, for example. So they access data that are on Arweave within the LT pipeline of Cosmos Chain. So it's super easy for them. And right now, our team, we just finished a beta tester program of it today. We are releasing casing. So casing is like basically state sync, but in a decentralized way that allow you to sync with any chain and any aid in less than 2 minutes, when it takes like 2, 3, 4 weeks to state with a chain. So basically it's like either like downloading the entire state of the chain from Genesis that take a lot of time, or asking for a snapshot that is very centralized. So like with Arweave and Kive, we can build those kind of products. And we plan to have more and more like stuff coming out like that for sure. We are like sponsoring hackathons, sponsoring like bounties and so on. So we are like kind of curious of what will happen next in the next month. We have a hackathon with Learn Web3. I know like Arweave ecosystem, all the Arweave ecosystem is like pretty close to them also for educational content. And those guys are very good for that. That someone built a kind of a decentralized Dune analytics gathering data from Arweave that have been uploaded through Kive. So it's kind of all those use cases that we see coming out. And like even like, yeah, the first idea is like already enough, and like all those projects like Kive and the other one that are building on top of Arweave, I think we have more than 130 projects in Q3 2023 building on top of Arweave, if I'm not wrong, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's awesome. And it's like not, like than other ecosystem, people just coming to get some money, but people building because they have a true vision and truly believe in the mission and vision of Arweave ecosystem as a whole. So it's cool.
That's super impressive. Yeah, indeed. And congrats on those launches and on the fast progress that you've been achieving at Kive. I think that indeed, like in this market phase, it's really interesting to see that sensible and fundamental use cases of Arweave are being built and really developed even further. And so it's always helpful to not have the distractions that super effervescent market has, and to enable the signal to be a lot stronger, not to have so much noise. So that's always super helpful in this space. Same question to you, Tom. What are some things that you're working on right now that you're excited about?
Yeah, so I think it's been a course of over a year of all these pieces, but the Bazaar product that we just launched, it's universal content marketplace. And basically it allows for atomic assets to be traded on the permaweb. And we shipped it maybe 6 weeks ago and just launched a atomic asset creator just last week. And this product allows just a very easy to use interface for creators to take their assets, whether it's 3D objects, videos, music, or pictures, and attach the universal data license to that to explain how they want this data to be treated in the marketplace. And then Bazaar takes that and you can either choose to trade it as a one-to-one, or you can fractionalize the asset. So you can trade it in multiple units, and then you provide licensing for access. So for example, with music, you can say, I want to allow for people to purchase this music for 1 U, and U is our unit of account token on the permaweb. And then it will render in Bazaar and only show it playing for like 10 seconds. And then it would come out and say, license this music, and you pay the 1 U, and then you get licensed that that song for forever. And so just seeing all of these protocols and technologies kind of come together. If you go to Bazaar, you can see stamps, and people are stamping stuff they like. You can enter in comments, and those comments are on chain forever, and they're actually atomic assets. So you can actually trade comments to atomic assets. And yeah, I'm just super excited about this composability vision really coming together. The last kind of example I'll give that I'm excited about is Fair Protocol. It is an AI marketplace, but because it's on the permaweb, you can create your images and with 1 click turn around and trade them on Bazaar. So it really gives the idea of a user traveling with their data through applications. And I get super excited about that, because you can't really do that in Web 2.
Totally. And it's, I mean, it is super exciting. I think that the rest of us here share your enthusiasm about it. It's really cool to see how these different pieces have come together, and now we can really have a whole set of behaviors from users, different types of user, end user, but also developers, and then just like spin up their own solution or their own application, or just like use it and start trading on these different assets that are available. Okay, Sam, same question for you. What are some things that you're working on right now, and why are you excited about them?
Yeah, so a lot of the same things that Tom mentioned. I think building the base layer of a composable web of data is super important for the Arweave ecosystem. Essentially, the idea is that if data is shared between applications, users have more sovereignty, their data has more exposure, and developers don't have to fight against network effects of existing systems. There's instead a way more, would you say, efficient market for content. And part of this comes to the universal data license, which was something we released in the middle of the summer, I think. Yeah, which is essentially a system that allows you to attach real-world rights to on-chain data and have those rights be tradable. This is kind of like NFTs done right, if you will. This is really a powerful thing, I think. Tom described some of the ways that can be used, but basically any application that produces data on the permaweb can suddenly have that data, A, be built upon by other applications, and B, produce royalty streams when other people use it. And when you buy and sell interest using the universal content marketplace, as Tom was describing, in these assets, yes, you're literally buying the real world rights associated with them, which is something I think relatively, it feels like it's kind of what the crypto ecosystem has been like nudging at in this, classically decentralized way, right? Lots of people having different ideas that approximate, the central thesis. But we're trying to like shoot for directly that middle pillar, if you will, make that thing real. And what I'm most excited about now that we have those, the base layer in place, I would say, is bringing platforms into the ecosystem that are producing large amounts of content that then other developers can permissionlessly build upon. So our hope is that once these platforms are in place, and there already are some, for example, Lens is uploading a large amount of social data to Arweave. Same with a number of other decentralized social media systems. Once these are in place, as a developer, it's a pretty profound shift in the proposition, right? Instead of it being like you're going to produce a better YouTube, which might be TikTok perhaps, and it takes you a weekend to build the application and then 10 years to fight against YouTube's network effects. Instead, you spend a weekend building the application, you start licensing data permissionlessly from the network, and suddenly you're competing with YouTube, not just competing, but adding value to the ecosystem that YouTube already created, capturing some value for yourself and sending some back to YouTube for having used their data. It's just a radically different proposition. And then the proposition is no longer like, okay, yeah, you have to do that, but you have to run all the infrastructure. Well, actually, if you use the PermaWeb properly, you can build on the top of the generic infrastructure. So if you build a PermaWeb app, for example, Bazaar or Now or Alex, these systems don't run their own infrastructure. You just publish them once and they run permissionlessly on a sort of generic backend, if you will, which is an Arweave gateway. And those are proliferating at a great rate. The Ario team is doing a really good job with their testnet, bringing online more and more gateways. There's some questions there about like proxying and this type of things, what's being hosted locally, what's being hosted on other servers, but like largely that situation is improving at a rapid pace as well. So those things are all really exciting. I think another thing that has been receiving a lot of attention in the ecosystem, which I believe will be a like step function change in the types of things you can build, is on the compute side. Now, I can't go into too much of the detail here, but there are evolutions of the warp system in the WERPs that I think are pretty dramatic in the changes that they'll make to the ecosystem, the applications that people are able to build. Stuff like fully decentralized, specific backends, for example, in a decentralized way will be possible, but I won't talk about that too much now. That'll be for a future announcement. So those are some of the things that we are focused on at Forward Research. I would say that that's just the Forward Research view of the world. Also, there's community labs and Hansa and a bunch of other ecosystem participants that all have their own view, and that's the strength of it. Like, this is our imagination, or imagining of what the next stage of adoption of the PermaWeb will look like. But there's many other people with different strategies as well, and so we'll leave it there. Yeah,
important. That's a super useful disclaimer in general, right? Like, these are certain views that there's not one single pillar view, because that is not the way that a healthy, robust ecosystem grows and can grow quickly. Okay, I'm mindful of the time here, and so I would propose doing this. Look, this is called the future of Arweave. We've covered a little bit the past. We've covered what we're all excited about now. Now I would like to change things a little bit, and change the format also a little bit. Rather than me asking you questions, why don't we all just like talk like we usually do whenever we have one of our ecosystem calls, and perhaps using my function here as moderator / host, I'd like to introduce one perhaps general topic to discuss and how that affects the future of Arweave, and that is sort of like the rise of artificial intelligence. And I think that in crypto we've seen for the majority, for the largest part, a super quick effect of AI, and that has been, if anything, funding. Like the funding has moved completely over to, or not completely, but like in a large part over to AI focused applications and use cases that have a lot of a strong component of artificial intelligence and large language models. So I'm wondering, all right, well, what does that mean for Arweave, being a system that allows you to store any type of information permanently? What are is this a good thing? Do you think that that LLMs are going to be able to use Arweave, or what are the implications of of AIs in Arweave? Is there some sort of like combination there or not? And this is not directed to anyone in particular. So, you know, first come, first serve, and you can just jump in. Anyone, any takers? Sam, maybe? Or Ahmad?
Go on.
Yeah, so we already talked about Arweave being a decentralized permanent storage solution, but no one mentioned smart Weave contracts on top. So traditionally, we had smart contracts on Ethereum or any other blockchains where you had to pay for gas fees. You had to pay some sort of fees for miners to basically process your transaction. But on using smart Weave contracts on Arweave, it's basically separates computation from storage. I think a few months ago, like 5-6 months ago, the Warp team was experimenting with training an entire machine learning model on chain. So because smart Weave contracts separate computation from storage, computation is happening on the client side. It's basically 100% free. It's not handled by the miners, and it's infinitely scalable. So they were testing things out, and I'm not sure about their progress now. But you can train AI or machine learning models directly on chain. Also using Arweave as a storage solution to store data, basically to use later on for AI is a really huge use case.
Yeah, to add to that, I think that there's three things. One I won't mention though, because I think there are things in the works about it. But two things that about the AI revolution that really affect Arweave. The first, or let's even say that Arweave can contribute to this wave. The first is storage of hashes of or the whole data of synthetic material. So one of the key questions in the AI revolution is, how do we do this safely, right? How do we make it so that we can move into this world where intelligence is available at more or less arbitrary scale for low cost, without moving into a world where we don't know what is true, right? Like if you can produce any sort of content about anything at virtually no cost, the world becomes a sort of dark forest, if you will, right? Like it's impossible to see whether the image you're seeing that claims to be of some great or terrible thing happening in politics is true or not, is real or not. And so one of the things that we can do with Arweave, and we've been working on an initiative called Rail for this, is to essentially store hashes of the outputs of synthetic content. So if you are a AI, would you say like platform, some people like OpenAI, Stability, these types of producers of content, you can store a hash in Arweave when you output an image, for example, to the network, or rather to the user. And then when you do this, people can look up, was this image created by an AI model? And if we can get the large producers of synthetic content to all adopt this standard, it will be easy for people to search for whether the content they're seeing is actually real or not. So I think that that's pretty important ability and capability to have, and Arweave provides a great way to do that because it's essentially an ownerless data ledger, right? So companies of one form or another can both contribute to it, can all contribute to it without having to ask permission and without having to trust another company or an organization to give them access. So it's this open data ledger that is enabling that. That's one component. Another, I think, is that we're essentially seeing the cost of producing user interfaces decline rapidly, right? So it used to be that a web application was a bundle of a user interface, so some source code, a set of application infrastructure, a set of data behind a domain name, more or less. And they came bundled as one. Arweave has already been unbundling layers of the stack, right? So you can upload data from one application and have it accessible by other applications, just to give one example. And you can pull back that application on different pieces of infrastructure. So you pay once to store the source code in the system, and then it can be sort of openly remixed when users access it through different infrastructure or different gateways, and also when different applications contribute data. This is all sort of an unbundling process. But what happens when that user interface becomes way cheaper to produce. You move into this world where they can be customized more and more. And so you can imagine a situation emerging where, well, Paul, for example, likes his decentralized Twitter with dark background, but Tom likes it with, for whatever reason, red background. Or perhaps more reasonably, Tom likes it with all of the universal data license rights visible when he accesses each piece of data that he's looking at. Whereas Seb is more interested in truthiness markets on the data he's seeing. Does the crowd believe that this data is true or not? Well, if the cost of producing web applications declines, these different customizations become more and more possible until you get to the point of what we call the data OS, which is essentially the theory that at the nth degree, at the end of this road, basically you will have a situation where you come along and you open the one app, we'll call it the data OS for short, and you say, hey, what happened in the world today? And the operating system, the data operating system, grabs the relevant piece of information from the network, pays the license fees that you need in order to access it, and then creates a rendering that is precisely tailored to you on the fly. And this is possible because basically you ask an LLM, hey, give me an app that does this or that, and it can more or less do it. It's relatively capable today, and where we are in 2 or 3 years from now will be like extremely capable. And so it can learn your preferences and find the right way to display data to you, in a powerfully customized way over time. And that's kind of where we think the web might go. And then essentially you just have this web that is mostly a big open lake of licensed indexed content. And then you have an AI working on your behalf, a user agent from the language of HTTP headers, which is customizing the way that is viewed by you, the renderer, if you will, that you're seeing when you access the data. Now that's going to take a little bit longer to play out. That's like a 10-year vision, I would say. But we already see the start of it coming into focus today. I mean, frankly, it's just easier to build web applications now than it was a year ago. And that means that there's more and more customization of access to the data set possible. That's something we're really excited about.
Okay, super interesting point. So maybe I'm taking a step back. If this vision comes true, right? So what does that mean for the content creators, and what role does then the UDL play into all this? Because I think that people are very almost instantly people started thinking, hey, how do I verify that something is the way that it was initially, right? And so you had different initiatives, one of which, like a very well-known one, is content credentials on Adobe, right? And they have for things that are created using Adobe Firefly, which is sort of like the LLM. They can just have metadata, so directly embedded in the image that you create. Which for me, it sounded a little bit like, cool, well, that's something that we already had on Arweave from the get-go. So you can have provenance, and you can also have guarantee of immutability. But then if you really have this data OS world, then what role does the UDL potentially play there? The UDL being the universal data license. How does that make sense? Because then people are just being scraped all the time and not necessarily receiving the fruits of their label. So I don't know if maybe Tom, you have some thoughts on how the UDL plays a role here.
Yeah, I have some opinions, and again, I'm sure there may be better ones, but my thought with the UDL, and I think very quickly in the next few years, the equivalent of the robots.txt file, where you can have a website and you can say, I don't want robots to look at these pages. I think the UDL will play a part, or could play a part, in that kind of AI.txt file where you say, hey, I don't want this data to be included in any AI models, or if you do include it, I want you to pay me X amount of units to include it, essentially license it from the author. So that's my little idea. I think And again, I kind of see more and more of these tech companies closing their APIs down because of AI. So I think Arweave could be a place where proper model building of AI data sets can be really tracked and used, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, right? I mean, particularly not only the robo.txt example, but the fact that you could use, that you have embedded in the asset itself, your wallet address, the copywriting regime, the royalty scheme that you have, that makes it like really useful to not have a platform dependency to, okay, now this platform needs to collect things, and it's a race to the bottom, and so at some point there's not going to be any fees associated with this, which is what happened with a couple of NFT platforms recently, right? So I think that is a sort of like a key differentiator there, and probably pretty useful in the future. But Sam, I think that you maybe wanted to say something, or yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like one of the key things that we haven't discussed is that if you go down this path as we think we will, you end up in a world where content is a way larger part of, if you will, the value stack. So it used to be on the web that there was, I think that this is stolen from Union Square Ventures. They had a blog post about this called the Fat Protocol Thesis, where basically they argued that in Web 1, the protocols accrued 0 of the value they produced, and 100% of the value was essentially captured by the companies that built on top of it. And maybe if it's a content company, then there's like 80% and 20% goes to the content. Even 15% most likely goes to the content creators in the end. Well, they saw this world emerging where actually the protocols could accrue value now, because they were looking at things like Ethereum and Bitcoin, which was, an exciting proposition if you're a VC trying to invest in stuff. And they basically saw that the applications would still accrue some of the value, but a lot of the value would accrue into the protocol. Well, we see a world emerging, which is kind of actually a 3-stack approach, where you say, okay, so the protocols accrue some value, yes, but the content accrues most of the value. When you upload to the data, when you upload to Arweave, you get to license it. And then when people want to use your data, they have to abide by your terms. And you choose the terms. And you don't just publish to one application, you publish to all applications by default. And then the applications can create some value and capture it on top of that. But the content is the largest part of the value stack here. And I think that that's it's a pretty fundamental shift. And will really like change the power relations. It used to be you're a YouTuber and you've really got to hope that YouTube doesn't decide to demonetize your account for whatever reason, or they monetize it in the first place. Actually, you're making a lot of revenue for YouTube before they even give you the option to make money from it. Same is true of X and so on. Yes, and then you have to hope that they're not going to cut more. And really, like, it's a monopoly, so they can cut as much as they want from you, and you can't really do anything about it. You can't feasibly go to an alternative. Whereas this world that we're seeing coming is basically that the content creators accrue most of the value. They get to set the terms, and they're publishing not just to one application, but to all applications, which means they're not beholden to any individual company that is setting the rules. And so they own their voice in a way that they just can't do on the current web as well. I mean, that's just like a handful of the things that I think will affect content creators in this new world we see coming.
That's super interesting. What do you think? Okay, you mentioned, I like the analogy with the Fat Protocol thesis. What do you think then the role of, and that's, again, these questions are open to anyone. What do you think then the role is of applications? So if I'm just working on a single, or like let's call it a stable application, stable user interface application, do I need to be worried, or what is the sort of like advantage there for me in this world that we're transitioning to? Any takers?
I have something I want to say about it, but like if someone else wants to go first, it's also okay.
I think that you can go for it.
Okay. Well, I think that we're basically offering a radically different proposition for developers as well, which is going to take some time to understand and to sort of come to terms with as an industry. But basically what we're saying is, look, you can produce an application now on a weekend. You publish it. You don't have to pay infrastructure costs anymore. When people access it, you can stick UDL on that application and actually have it so that people have to pay in order to access that user interface. So you're immediately revenue generating, which is a powerfully different approach. And you don't have to do all of this stuff to break the network effects that you used to have to do. And so actually the process of creating an application is way more hackathon style than Web2, monopolistic company style. You don't have to work on it for 15 years. A weekend will be fine. But also the outcome, so the responsibilities are different too. You don't have to run any of your own infrastructure. You never have to pay for it again after it's published. But also the outcome is going to be smaller than if like building a Facebook or something like that. And you could build 20 different applications if you so desire instead. And that's kind of a result of the fact that fundamentally, you don't get user lock-in with a system like this to the application. The user is not locked into using your application. They can go to many different applications if they want, and that is a good thing. And so we're proposing something pretty radically different for developers. And I think that'll be an interesting communication challenge and onboarding challenge over the next few years, I suppose.
Right. So perhaps another way of thinking, or the way that I conceptualize it based on what we've been talking about here, is maybe the game for me now is I want to create as many versions of user interfaces as I can that are incentivizing people to contribute data that is licensed in a specific way using UDL, because the UI also will take a cut. This is something that you can determine here. And so my game here will be, as a developer or as an investor, just like, hey, what is the best way to get people to contribute and to this open data lake information that then someone else wants to use and has to sort of like pay for? Would that be sort of like a fair assessment? Maybe Tom or Sam or Paul, Ahmad, what do you guys think? Does it make sense? Is a game that you, as you're either engineers and developers, is that a game that would be enticing for other folks?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, from my purview, this idea of being able to create evolutionary apps. So if I build something for the weekend and it's 60% there, and then Seb comes and adds 20%, and then Sam comes and adds another 20%, this ability for us all to benefit in that revenue stream. So like Sam said, just a lot more short-term projects. And again, with AI, there's probably going to be in the next few years where AI will be building these apps, right? And that'll be an interesting conversation in that. But just the ability to put a data license on it and license it, and then allow people to fork it and build on top of that and keep the terms of that license is pretty powerful, I think.
Maybe, Tom, it might be worth outlining what are evolutionary apps, because I'm not sure everyone in the audience will know.
Sure. So evolutionary apps is a concept that Sam came up with about 12 months ago. And we actually have a prototype in the Ford Research Group called Darwin. And basically, it allows you to essentially publish your application on the PermaWeb, but with the ability and the rules for someone to fork it. So in the developer community, I can take Sam's app of WeaveMail, and I could take that source code, if it's open source, and I could fork that, and then I could add my features, and then I could rebuild that and publish it. With Darwin and evolutionary apps, I'm basically creating a branch, and I'm using license and contract to say, if I generate any revenue from my fork, that I continue to pay Sam. And you could have multiple branches of this as things build up, and essentially allow for multiple user interfaces, again, accessing the same data, and all the developers are able to essentially get their fair share when monetization happens to that application.
Thank you. Yep, super useful. I think that sometimes there's so many things happening here, and that it's very important to just spell these out. So thanks for that. All right, I know that we're coming up on time, and we probably all need to wrap it up. So perhaps any parting thoughts, and if it's okay with you, maybe we can just like go down the order that we have here in this slide, onto like what it looks like in the next 6 to 12 months for the Arweave ecosystem. Any things that you might want to highlight, or things that you're going to be working on to drive that future of the Arweave ecosystem. Maybe Sam, you want to get started?
Yeah, so I think as I described earlier, a big focus for us at Forward Research is, okay, we have the base layer of the composable web infrastructure in place now. In theory, you can do this. We have the universal data license, the storage system, of course, which is Arweave, and then the universal content marketplace where you can trade interest in these things. And we have the first sample, or I would say beta applications that like display this in practice. You can do data composability today. You see that people upload assets to Alex, the archiving system, and they show up in Bazaar, for example, or you upload things with PST and they will show up in Now. This is great, but it's time to go kind of, I was about to say mainstream. Realistically, not quite mainstream to begin with, but closer to mainstream, with the first real world applications. And that's what I imagine that we will be seeing in the next 6 months or so, on top of a bunch of changes in the compute space that I think will be also very exciting. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, totally agree. And again, I think what I'll be working on is continuing to be improving on the protocols and really trying to work with teams to really add more discoverability to the assets. So we've got now dataos.so, so we can see what assets are being tagged and just really try to work with teams to do that, but also kind of laser focused in this compute world, and to really see if we can't come up with some innovative approaches to create some really scalable compute. Just continuing to build off of all of the learned lessons in the ecosystem. So that's really what I'm kind of focusing on in the next 6 months.
Thank you very much, Tom. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, so on our side, it will be basically integrating more runtime. So right now we are focusing on Thunder means runtime, but we want really to expand to other runtime such Solana, like Mina, Aurora, Avalanche, and so on. I think what is quite interesting also for us, it's the EIP 4844 that is coming up with dunk sharding and so on. So for all like Ethereum data that know they are on a proof of stake mechanism, it's quite tedious for them to keep all this historical data. So we have a lot of research to do also with all LayerTwo. So it will be like mainly focusing on other runtime and bringing all historical data of almost any like proof of stake layer 1, layer 2 out there on Arweave to make those data permanently stored and accessible for everyone for the long term. So that would be our mainly focus, and after for sure extend the access of those data for like Web2 developers and Web3 developers in the future.
That's awesome. And where can people find you or follow Kive? What is the best place to do so and to stay on top of all these innovations?
So right now we have the Kive Academy. If you are like not like really dev, let's say, even if you are a dev, you can start using the Kive Academy. So we have made like courses, but also like not only about Kive, but blockchain in general, but also about Arweave. Why you should like, what is the difference between, for example, Arweave and Filecoin? Why Arweave is so like important for us, like all these kind of resources. And then after, for sure, if you want to to deep dive a bit more, I would say the docs are the best, but also GitHub. And for sure, like, you are free to come on our Discord server if you have any question. Always, our team is always happy to answer. And if you want to build your own integration and start having a decentralized validation pipeline to Arweave, you can build it on top of Kive without any cost. You just go through the governance. We are fully permissionless, so anyone can use Kive basically.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like the name. It reminds me of this other sort of like massive open online course thing called Khan Academy. It was one of the first ones before they became a lot more professionalized. Anyway, thanks, Paul. What about you, Ahmad?
Yeah, so our main vision at WeaveDB is basically to onboard the next 1 million devs from Web 2 into Web 3, and we are doing this by trying to provide a seamless dev experience similar to Web 2, to the Web 2 world. So what we are working on for the next 6 months is to release our new rollup node. We announced this in Singapore last month. At Arweave Day. So our rollup will allow you to build a fully decentralized application using WeaveDB as an underlying database solution. And we are really excited for this because it will allow you to build like an infinitely scalable application, like social media dApps on top of WeaveDB and Arweave. So yeah, really excited to be a part of this journey and to contribute to the growth of Arweave.
Amazing. Where can people find more about WeaveDB? What is the best place?
So the official documentation, if you want to dive into how to build a database using WeaveDB, our docs are literally to the point and simple to follow. If you have any questions, please feel free to join our Discord. You can ask any questions you have. Also, we have so many tutorials on our website on how to build applications using WeaveDB and other protocols like Bundler or Lit protocol or Lens or others. So you can dive into these tutorials to integrate multiple tools with WeaveDB too.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Sam, Tom, Paul, Ahmad, for joining us and for jumping on this call to talk about like what we're going to be working on and what we can expect in the near future. And thank you so much for everyone that tuned in and for spending time here. You now know also where to find us and how to contribute. And a big thank you to PermaDAO and to Coral in particular. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good one. See you in the PermaWeb.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
for having us.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
You guys.